One of the issues that's been bothering me lately is people talking about this disease they have, or their friend has this disease, and the disease they describe is alcoholism or addiction. Well, first of all, I'm going to college for my RN and my Associates of Science, and one of the things you learn is what is a disease and what isn't a disease. Um, Now, there's a difference between, like I was mentioning on a previous video, a mental disorder and a neurological disease. Alcoholism or any form of addiction is not a disease. Regardless of what AA or other anonymous groups tell you, it's not a disease. Here's why it's not a disease. How do you determine whether or not someone's an alcoholic? How do you know? What blood test do they give? They don't. It's subjective. If you believe that you're an alcoholic, well then, who's to say you are or aren't? It's a subjective checklist that you give yourself. And you make up these checks, these questions, which you check mark or whatever. But I'm sorry, it's not a disease. Even the medical community does not see it as a disease. And here are some of the arguments I've been given. Well, some people are genetically more likely to become alcoholics than other people, and this is a fact. Well, that's true, but some people are not genetically as compatible or suffer consequences if they're in the fucking sunlight, for crying out loud. Does that mean that they have a disease called Caucasian? No. It doesn't work that way. Just because you have a genetic disposition towards something or don't have that genetic disposition doesn't mean you're genetically diseased. It doesn't work that way. How it works is if you have a disease, it's testable. There is an actual medical test that you can get to see whether or not you have this disease. They can do a test to see if you have herpes, if you have bronchitis, if you have tuberculosis. All these different diseases, whether they're genetic or otherwise, they can test to see whether you have, and you either have it or you don't. It's not like, well, maybe I have it, maybe I don't. Sometimes it goes into remission, and sometimes, you can recover from it or whatever. Like cancer. Cancer can sometimes go away on its own because your body learns how to fight off these growing cells that aren't supposed to be growing. It's like, no, change the DNA back, that kind of thing. But with alcoholism, I've got a friend who said that he was an alcoholic for he was saying that, yes, I am an alcoholic for 2 years, but he didn't go to AA. Now, instead of drinking a 24 case and still not being drunk, he drinks a 6-pack and he's wasted. Half of a 6-pack actually, and he's drunk and, all, that, happy, hugging, like, oh man, I love you, bro, after like 3 beers. And we're not even talking like heavy shit. But yeah, it's not a disease. Even my Psychology for Nursing book, which is Lifespan Development, which I can photocopy the page if I can find it, says that it's a mental disorder because it's subjective whether or not you have it. Organizations like AA or other 12-step programs are trying to say that it's a disease, but they don't want it treated like a disease. They go at it from a religious aspect, and no disease in modern medicine is treated with religious aspects as its sole treatment, or the sole form of treatment. So let's go to 12step.org. Let's look at their steps to recovery. Okay? We admit we are powerless over our addiction. Well, first of all, you need to address that you, one, have a problem, not address that you're powerless over it. Because once you're aware that you have a problem, you then have the power, your brain, your body, your intellect, to overcome such problems in your life. Okay? You are the only one who can make decisions for you. You're the only one who decides what you put in your body unless something's being forced into you. Okay? But if no one is physically forcing the stuff into you, it's all your choice. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. Seriously, have you ever heard a doctor say, well, the second form of treatment we're going to provide for you is you have to believe in a power greater than yourself? Have you ever heard a doctor ever say anything about like that? Ever? No. There's a reason for that, because believing a higher power or a greater power or whatever has nothing to do with diseases. Okay, you don't go to get your flu vaccine and have the doctor say, well, this flu vaccine won't work if you don't believe in a higher power. No, it doesn't work that way. That's a religious belief. That has nothing to do with the disease. Let's go on to another step. Make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to care of God as we understand God. Well, shit, give your will over? When the hell would you ever have to give your will over to cure yourself of a disease? Seriously. You know, when even cancer patients, they go to chemotherapy. They don't go to church. Well, sometimes they may go to church, but not for treatment. Maybe for a wing on a prayer to get better. But, you know, certainly not as treatment. They don't say, well, let's see, I could go in for chemo, or I could, you know, go to church. The person who goes to chemo is like 100 times more likely to go into recovery than the person who just goes to church. The person who just goes to church is likely to die. So I'm sorry, but that's not treatment. Admit to God, to ourselves, and other human beings the exact nature of our wrongs. Our wrongs? Whoa, 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 whoa. When someone has leukemia, they don't say, well, I have leukemia because I made a lot of mistakes in my life. They say, no, someone poisoned our well water, or, you know, something like that, which actually happened in New York. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Defects of character? That sounds like it's based on personality and behavior, which is exactly why it's not a disease. Because if it's a behavior, which continuously putting something into your own body is, then it's not a disease. That's outside of the definition of disease, and therefore can't be a disease. Make a list of all persons we had harmed. Seriously, you don't get better from meningitis by making a list of any kind. Unless it's like a drug list that you need to be taking. You know, for the pharmacy. Make direct amends to such people wherever possible. Once again, this has nothing to do with treating a disease. Nothing on this list has anything to do. Having had a spiritual awakening, okay, first of all, no, I'm sorry. You can't. There isn't even any proof, any scientific evidence that any kind of spirit resides within a human being. Now, whether I believe one exists or not is another question. But there's no scientific evidence for it. So why would the only treatment be something that has no scientific evidence that exists in the first place? And this is exactly what it says at the bottom of all these 12 steps. Now, I haven't covered all of them. I'm trying to, quickly, because YouTube has a time limit on how long you can talk, or have a length of a video. So, to quote the very bottom of this list, it says, this version of the 12 steps is an adaptation from the original 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and is intended for general use with any addictive or dysfunctional behavior. A behavior cannot be a disease. It doesn't work like that. The best you can categorize this is, as my textbook says, is a mental disorder. And mental disorders are usually in character. Thank you.